I'm David Toman, author of Nootropics Expert and this YouTube channel. I was diagnosed with adult ADD about 16 years ago, and Ritalin changed my life. For the first time in my adult life, I could focus. But I grew tolerant to Ritalin within a couple of years, and I panicked. I had finally found something that worked to help me focus and wouldn't work anymore? I don't think so. So I started researching to find out how Ritalin worked. And I learned that it was a dopamine reuptake inhibitor. So, if it no longer worked, maybe I didn't have enough dopamine in my brain? I did some research and I found that I could increase dopamine by using supplements. I also discovered that brain cell signaling was a problem in adult ADD. And there were supplements that could help with that. I put together a little nootropic stack using L-Tyrosine, CDP-Choline, and ALCAR, and Ritalin started working again. And if I took a third dose at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it prevented the stimulant crash. Now that was my introduction to nootropic supplements. And that is what I'm going to share with you in this video. You'll learn what ADHD is, how to know if you're ADHD or ADD, and what supplements you can use to support the prescription stimulants you are currently using. Or take care of your ADHD symptoms naturally, just with nootropic supplements. So grab a pen and paper to make some notes, or click on the link to the full transcript over on my website. I provided the link down below in the notes section of this video. So let's get started and dig into the best nootropics for ADHD. That's next. Depending on the severity of your ADHD symptoms, you may be able to use nootropics as an alternative to prescription stimulants like Adderall, Ritalin, Vivance, and their variations. I experimented for a year by using nootropics in place of the 20 milligrams of Ritalin I had been using 3 times a day for several years. And for the most part, I was successful in taming my adult ADD symptoms. Now, during my 1-year stimulant holiday, the ingredients in MindLab Pro, along with L-Tyrosine, CDP-Choline, and ALCAR, kept my dopamine, norepinephrine, and acetylcholine levels high enough to maintain focus, motivation, and improve my memory. Vinpocetine kept my brain blood flow at optimal levels, and aniracetam and salbutamine, that combo, improved my mood. But after a year, I decided to go back to using 20 milligrams of Ritalin twice a day because my workload had me writing 10 hours a day and maintaining working relationships with 2 or 3 clients at once. By adding Ritalin back to my stack, I was able to reduce the time it would take to complete a project from 3 days to 1.5 days. Now that was proof to me that my brain couldn't make it with just nootropics alone. Now the beauty of continuing to use L-Tyrosine with CDP-Choline and ALCAR, even after I started using Ritalin again, was that I avoided the stimulant crash that is so common later on in the afternoon when using these stimulants. And I was able to reduce the original 20 milligrams of Ritalin 3 times a day down to only twice a day. And I have not grown tolerant to Ritalin since, which is what you would normally expect when using stimulants to treat ADD or ADHD. Now, your situation may be different, or ADHD symptoms not as severe. Only you can decide if nootropics can replace ADHD meds. Now, the stack I describe in this video is designed to be used with or without stimulant meds. Now, whether you use this stack with meds or without, you'll need to discover for yourself what dosages of each nootropic are ideal for you, because the amounts that work for me may not work as well for you. Now, you may need less L-Tyrosine or ALCAR, for example. Now, experimenting is the key to success with nootropics and knowing as much as you can about what's going on in your brain that needs to be fixed. But after many years of recommending this ADHD nootropic stack to people just like us around the world, we know that this works. This video is in response to many emails and questions I've been getting about how to treat ADHD or ADD with nootropics. So if you're dealing with ADHD, hopefully this video will help, especially if you're using stimulants like Ritalin or Adderall, Revance, Focalin, or any of the other stimulants prescribed for ADD and ADHD, or you're trying to deal with ADHD naturally by avoiding prescription stimulants. This information can also help if you're a student or an executive who uses prescription quote-unquote smart drugs like Adderall or modafinil to boost productivity. Here we'll dig into the causes of ADHD or ADD in your brain, symptoms associated with ADD, and what you can do using nootropics or nootropics stacked with stimulants to correct ADHD symptoms. I'll also include ways to potentiate the effectiveness of prescription stimulants with nootropics so they work better. Now, if you've never officially been diagnosed ADHD, but some of this resonates with you, you could be ADHD or ADD, and this may point you to some answers. Now, I've been ADD all my life. ADD is ADHD, but without the hyperactivity. But it wasn't until about 16 years ago that a very wise psychiatrist identified what was going on and why I had been struggling with focus and other problems with behavior that no amount of self-help books on focus and management could ever correct. Ritalin turned the lights on for me and completely changed my life for the better. Now, this was the seed that sprouted my interest in neuroscience and nootropics, and ultimately launching nootropicsexpert.com. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or attention deficit disorder are associated with attention and executive function in your brain. Your prefrontal cortex directs behavior, thought, and feeling, which are all associated with working memory. These fundamental cognitive abilities that most take for granted are what make up executive function. This executive function and working memory give you the ability to regulate your attention, inhibit inappropriate behavior and thought, monitor your actions, and plan and organize your future. Now, if you can't focus on the task at hand, if you blurt things out at inappropriate times, if you have little control over your emotions or actions, and you can't seem to stick to that careful set of goals you wrote down, you may be ADHD. Norepinephrine and dopamine are the primary neurotransmitters involved in ADHD because they play an essential role in attention and thinking. These two neurotransmitters work in concert to maintain alertness, increase focus, sustain thought, effort, and motivation. The only difference between the two is the presence of a hydroxyl group. And dopamine is a precursor to norepinephrine synthesis in your brain. Now, much of what you read about ADHD focuses on dopamine's function in your brain. But norepinephrine plays a critical role in activating your reaction to events and how you respond to the event. Norepinephrine is essential for collecting information coming in through your senses and then modulating your brain's response. Any disruption in this norepinephrine system can result in ADHD, post-traumatic stress disorder, sleep disorders, and more. For example, norepinephrine working with frontal B and alpha-2A receptors in your brain play an essential role in helping you to focus attention and eliminate distractions when you're paying attention to something. Now, this is just one example of what goes wrong in the ADHD brain. My point in bringing all this up is not to overwhelm you with the neuroscience, but to make clear that simply suggesting too much or too little of a single neurotransmitter like dopamine cannot explain the complexity of ADHD. So using a nootropic like L-Tyrosine to increase dopamine in your brain is often not enough to take care of ADHD symptoms. Or using Adderall with someone who has a problem with the alpha-2 receptor binding with norepinephrine may not get much benefit. This is the reason that experimenting with various nootropics is often the only way to find a long-term solution to keeping ADHD under control, and why some respond better to a drug like Ritalin and not as well to Adderall, or vice versa. And recent research shows serotonin and acetylcholine are involved too. mostly the hyperactivity part of ADHD, which includes movement, inattention, and impulsivity. If you're truly and clinically ADHD or ADD, it is unlikely that optimizing your diet, getting plenty of sleep, using nootropics, and exercising regularly will get the symptoms of ADHD under control. The most severe forms of ADHD often benefit from using prescription medication, otherwise known as smart drugs in some circles. These meds are typically amphetamines or methylphenidate. The amphetamine class of ADHD medications includes Adderall, dextroamphetamine, and Vyvanse. The methylphenidate class of ADHD medications includes methylphenidate, or Ritalin, and its variants like Concerta and Focalin. Adderall and Ritalin both work with dopamine and norepinephrine in your brain, but through different mechanisms of action. Ritalin is a pure uptake inhibitor of dopamine and norepinephrine without any other presynaptic activity. Adderall, on the other hand, has additional presynaptic activity, releasing dopamine and norepinephrine from presynaptic neurons. The idea for the last 60 years or so has been that if we could boost dopamine and norepinephrine in the brain, ADHD symptoms would go away, as long as we're taking the meds. In an ideal world, taking one pill 2 or 3 times a day to treat ADHD would put your life back on track and help you function like a normal person. But real-world results often don't work out as well as theory for several reasons. For example, what if there's not enough dopamine or norepinephrine in your brain in the first place? Then stimulants will not work as well as planned because they haven't the neurotransmitters in place to work with. You could also have problems with not enough or damaged receptors. Natural aging processes can slow blood flow or inhibit the production of neurotransmitters. A lack of acetylcholine could prevent your neurotransmitters from doing what they're designed to do. Now, this is where nootropics can help save the day in treating the symptoms of ADHD. One of the main culprits contributing to ADHD symptoms is a lack of dopamine and norepinephrine in your brain, or your brain is not using the available dopamine and norepinephrine effectively. Stimulants like Adderall and Ritalin work to boost the levels of these two critical neurotransmitters, or how they work. Production of dopamine and norepinephrine in your body follows this metabolic pathway. It goes phenylalanine to L-Tyrosine, to L-Dopa, to dopamine, to norepinephrine. Dopamine is converted to norepinephrine by the enzyme dopamine B monogenase and oxygen and ascorbic acid, or vitamin C, as cofactors. And norepinephrine can further be converted into epinephrine, or adrenaline, by the enzyme phenylethylamine N-methyltransferase with SAMe as a cofactor. Now, nootropics to boost dopamine include L-Tyrosine. L-Tyrosine is the precursor to producing dopamine in your brain. L-Tyrosine enhances working memory, executive function, creative flow states, reduces stress, it improves mood, and is anti-anxiety. The suggested recommended dose for L-Tyrosine for ADHD is 350 to 500 milligrams 2 or 3 times a day. Now, I successfully stack 500 milligrams of L-Tyrosine 3 times a day, once each time I use my Ritalin dose and the last dose mid-afternoon to prevent a stimulant crash. Now, Mucuna Pruriens, or L-Dopa. Mucuna Pruriens works as an antioxidant and a heavy metal chelator. It improves the memory and cognition. It reduces depression and boosts libido. L-Dopa is also the direct precursor to dopamine. The suggested dosage of Mucuna Pruriens extract is 250 to 500 milligrams twice a day. Now, but if you're just starting out with nootropics, I highly recommend using L-Tyrosine or NALT instead of Mucuna Pruriens, because Mucuna Pruriens can be more difficult to dose since it directly stimulates the production of dopamine. L-Tyrosine and NALT are more forgiving when it comes to dosage. N-Acetyl L-Cysteine, or NAC, is an amino acid that regulates the amount of glutamate and dopamine in your brain. NAC can be used to treat the symptoms of ADHD and even helps eliminate some of the negative side effects associated with prescription ADHD stimulants. The recommended dosage for NAC is 500 or 600 milligrams 3 times a day. Phosphatidylserine, or PS for short. PS can help improve alertness, attention, cognition, memory, recall, and mood, and it lowers anxiety, all issues associated with ADHD. Phosphatidylserine is a phospholipid component of the membranes encasing every one of your brain cells. It helps maintain the fluidity and permeability of brain cells, improving the flow of dopamine and acetylcholine. Now, the suggested recommended dose for phosphatidylserine is 100 milligrams 3 times a day. Maritime pine bark extract helps prevent decreases in dopamine and norepinephrine and the glutathione and GSH disulfide reductase ratio, neurotransmitter problems which contribute to the hyperactivity in ADHD. Pine bark extract also helps boost blood flow in your brain by increasing nitric oxide, which helps dilate blood vessels. And it helps reduce oxidative stress, membrane damage, DNA damage, inflammation, and glycation. I've found one of the most potent forms of pine bark extract comes in both MindLab Pro and Performance Lab Mind. Now, a word of caution here in boosting the catecholamines, dopamine, and norepinephrine. Too much of either is not a good thing. In fact, excess levels of either one will throw your neurotransmitter levels out of balance, and it can cause anxiety, insomnia, and panic attacks. The H in ADHD stands for hyperactivity. Boosting levels of dopamine and norepinephrine can help balance out hyperactivity and help calm and focus your mind. But often simply boosting or balancing these neurotransmitters is not enough. Recent studies show that serotonin and dopamine interaction also play a role in ADHD. Serotonin is involved in the uptake, synthesis, and breakdown of dopamine in your brain. Problems with serotonin seem to contribute to behavior and impulse control. Now, much more research needs to be done in this area of ADHD, but we can help control and balance serotonin with nootropics. 5-HTP. This amino acid is synthesized from the amino acid tryptophan, and 5-HTP is the immediate precursor to serotonin in your brain. 5-HTP can help relieve anxiety and depression, fibromyalgia, insomnia, migraines, and likely the hyperactivity, depression, and anxiety associated with ADHD. The recommended dose for 5-HTP is only 50 milligrams up to 3 times a day. Now, please see my dosage notes and warnings about supplementing with 5-HTP in my 5-HTP video on this channel. Ginseng. Ginseng helps calm anxiety and boost attention, concentration, and memory. Ginseng provides neuroprotective effects on the dopamine pathway, which can help with ADHD. And ginseng is a serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. The recommended dose for ginseng is 100 to 400 milligrams a day. L-Theanine, which is commonly found in green tea, it helps boost alpha and theta brain waves. So it's anti-anxiety, it boosts cognition, memory, and it reduces insomnia. L-Theanine also helps boost GABA, serotonin, and dopamine use in your brain. The recommended dose for L-Theanine is 150 milligrams 2 or 3 times a day. Rhodiola Rosea. Rhodiola Rosea helps improve alertness, energy, memory, mood, and is anti-anxiety and is an antidepressant. It reduces fatigue and it boosts cognition and concentration. Rhodiola influences serotonin and norepinephrine levels in your brain. The recommended nootropic dosage for rhodiola extract is 150 to 200 milligrams a day. And then saffron. Saffron acts as a dopamine and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor, similar to how Ritalin works. A randomized double-blind study was conducted with 54 children who were 6 to 17 years old who were given 20 to 30 milligrams of methylphenidate or 20 to 30 milligrams of saffron per day for 6 weeks. At the end of the study, the researchers concluded short-term therapy with a saffron capsule showed the same efficacy compared with methylphenidate. Recommended dose of saffron is 30 milligrams a day. Vitamin B6 helps your brain make serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, and melatonin. The recommended dose for vitamin B6 is up to 100 milligrams a day. Vitamin B9 or folate. Folate is a nootropic, helps your brain make dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and serotonin. The recommended dosage for methylfolate is 400 micrograms per day. And vitamin B12 or methylcobalamin is a cofactor in the synthesis of acetylcholine, dopamine, GABA, norepinephrine, and serotonin. The recommended dosage for vitamin B12 is 100 micrograms per day. Now take note that several of the B vitamins are involved in the production of the neurotransmitters involved in ADHD. I recommend adding a good B complex, a bioactive B complex that's well above the RDA levels that includes methylfolate instead of folic acid and methylcobalamin, not cyanocobalamin, to your nootropic stack, both in a pure nootropic stack as well as when stacking with any of the ADHD prescription stimulants. But it's not only the B vitamins that are required for a healthy, fully functioning brain. We also need each of the 13 vitamins and the 13 minerals needed for everything from blood flow, neurotransmitter synthesis and release, brain cell signaling, and neuroprotection. Now, I've found the easiest way to make sure my ADHD brain gets all the vitamins and minerals it needs every day is to also use a multivitamin supplement. Now, the best I've found so far is the multivitamin called Performance Lab Nutrigenesis Multi. I use the one for men. My wife uses the one for women. It's better than the raw food multi I was using for years, and it makes a difference I can actually feel. Now, please note that this multi is in addition to the B complex I'm suggesting because the ADHD brain needs more of these critical nutrients than what is normally in any good multivitamin, especially if you're older. Researchers at Vanderbilt University Medical Center discovered that there are 3 types of ADHD. We've already covered the inattentive type that is related to issues with the norepinephrine transporter gene, and the link to the dopamine transporter gene in the hyperactive and impulsive type. But the research team now report that a variation in the choline transporter gene is associated with a combined type of ADHD. Symptoms include both inattention and hyperactivity or impulsivity. Choline is required to synthesize acetylcholine, which is needed for memory, motor control, focus, learning, concentration, and cognition. Now, if you have the combined type of ADHD, it's likely due to a mutation in this choline transporter gene. Nootropics to boost acetylcholine include ALCAR, or Acetyl-L-Carnitine. ALCAR donates a methyl group in the presence of coenzyme A for the synthesis of acetylcholine. And it's also a shuttle transport for fatty acids through brain cell membranes. It shuttles fatty acids into mitochondria for ATP synthesis and shuttles toxic byproducts back out again. Researchers from the Linus Pauling Institute show ALCAR will restore mitochondrial function. It'll replenish age-related changes to mitochondrial structure, and it helps replenish acetylcholine levels to your brain and body. And other studies show that ALCAR stimulates nerve growth factor, helping to support survival and growth of neurons, which is particularly important for the ADHD brain, and especially when you're using prescription stimulants that may be tough on neurons. Alpha-lipoic acid increases acetylcholine production by activation of choline acetyltransferase, and it increases glucose uptake. This process supplies more acetyl-CoA for the production of acetylcholine. Acetylcholine enhances insulin-stimulated glucose transport and metabolism for better brain cell performance. And the natural form, R-lipoic acid, provides strong antioxidant support because it helps regenerate and recycle existing antioxidants that are already in your brain, including vitamin C and E and glutathione and CoQ10. Now, I've since switched the ALCAR supplement that I used to use in my ADD stack to Performance Lab Energy, because this pre-formulated energy stack contains my preferred dose of ALCAR. But note that I also take another separate 500 milligrams of ALCAR with L-Tyrosine later in the day to prevent the stimulant crash. Now, the Performance Lab Energy supplement also contains alpha-lipoic acid and ALCAR, which helps my ADD brain produce acetylcholine. And then CDP-Choline, or Citicoline. It helps synthesize phosphatidylserine, which is a major phospholipid found in each one of your brain cell membranes. And it provides choline for the synthesis of acetylcholine while providing antioxidant activity. The CDP-Choline in my ADD stack is supplied by MindLab Pro, which is the base of my nootropic stack. But a suitable alternative to MindLab Pro is Performance Lab Mind, which contains the branded form of citicoline called cognizine. Performance Lab Mind and MindLab Pro also contain L-Tyrosine, Phosphatidylserine, and Maritime pine bark extract. One of the issues with neurotransmitters and ADHD are damaged or non-existent receptors. Dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin have less receptors to bind to for cognition and mood control. Now, once again, nootropics come to the rescue in helping to control ADHD. Now, you can add one of these nootropics to your stack to help boost receptor health. Ashwagandha. This adaptogen helps reduce anxiety and depression, and it helps reconstruct axons, dendrites, and synapses involved in neurotransmitter signaling in your brain. The recommended dose for ashwagandha extract is 250 to 500 milligrams a day. Bacopa Monnieri. It helps boost memory and cognition. It improves mood and it reduces stress. This adaptogen affects brain levels of acetylcholine needed to help neurotransmitter signaling. And the two active components of Bacopa Monnieri, called bacosides A and B, not only improve signaling of electrical impulses between neurons in your brain, bacosides also help rebuild damaged neurons. The recommended dosage of Bacopa Monnieri is up to 450 milligrams a day. Lion's mane mushroom is known for stimulating nerve growth factor, improving cognition and memory, and relieving depression. Lion's mane stimulates the repair and creation of neurons in your brain, neurons needed for dopamine and norepinephrine to control ADHD. The recommended dosage of lion's mane mushroom is 500 milligrams twice a day. Now note that there's an effective 500 milligram dose of lion's mane in MindLab Pro. Noopept helps boost cognition, memory, learning, perception, logical thinking, and mood. Noopept increases nerve growth factor and brain-derived nootropic factor, critical for neuroplasticity and long-term potentiation, which is needed for long-term memory. Noopept also prevents the release of excess glutamate in your brain, providing potent neuroprotection for neurons and reducing damage. The recommended dosage of Noopept is 10 milligrams 3 times a day. Now, please note that I haven't linked through to supporting clinical studies for each of the nootropics listed in this, or that I talked about in this video. But go to the original transcript for this video and click through to each nootropic for a full review of that nootropic. The link is down to the article is down below in the notes section. ADHD and ADD is most often diagnosed in children. The latest statistics, now this is way back in 2011, but it's the best I got, from the CDC in the U.S. shows that about 11% of children 4 to 17 years of age, or 6.4 million kids, have been diagnosed with ADHD. And that's just for the U.S. Although ADHD is usually first diagnosed in kids, it's often lasts into adulthood. And I sometimes wonder how my life would have been different if I had been declared ADD when I was a kid. But it wasn't until the late 1960s that the American Psychiatric Association formally recognized ADHD as a mental disorder. And I wasn't declared ADD until much, much later. The thing about many parents, they're wary about putting their children on powerful prescription ADHD meds. Kids' brains continue to develop until their early 20s. So, is it a problem messing with brain chemistry at such a young age? Only time will tell if the benefits outweigh the risk. Hence, the reason why parents are looking for natural alternatives like nootropics to treat ADHD in their kids. But are nootropic supplements any safer than prescription stimulants? Common sense tells me that using L-Tyrosine could be safer than Ritalin for boosting dopamine. And Rhodiola Rosea could be safer than stimulants or antidepressants for taming hyperactivity. Many children with ADHD, natural supplements may not be enough. Now, I'm not a doctor. I don't even play one on TV or on this YouTube channel. I'm just an ordinary biohacker, an ordinary guy who has learned as much as I can to help myself and fix my own cognitive issues, including adult ADD. So I highly recommend you find and work with an open-minded psychiatrist with your child. You may be pleasantly surprised to find that you may be able to reduce or eliminate prescription ADHD meds altogether, and maybe not. But the long-term health of your child could be worth the time investment to find out. I have been wanting to update this video since I started this channel. If you're ADD or ADHD and you found this useful, and I would appreciate your feedback and share your experience with treating ADHD with nootropics in the comments section down below this video. Now, please share this video with anyone that you think would benefit, including discussions about nootropics for ADHD on places like Reddit or Longecity. And one final note, neurotransmitter balance is key to taming ADHD. I strongly caution you to take it slow if you're just starting out with nootropics. Carefully listen to and read each of the extended articles and videos in my Nootropics, the channel here on YouTube, as well as on my website. You need to be careful about side effects, prescription drug interactions, dosages, and how your body reacts to each supplement. But I'm confident that with careful planning and long-term commitment, you can be as successful as I have in living and thriving with ADHD or ADD. So that's my update on the best nootropics for ADHD. If you want to see links to the studies I talked about, go to nootropicsexpert.com, my website, and search for ADHD. Or click on the link below in the notes section of this video. Now, once you're on my website, Nootropics Expert, you'll find a full transcript for this video. You'll also find dozens of articles on all the well-known nootropics over on Nootropics Expert. And if you haven't already, download your free copy of Secrets of the Optimized Brain. It's nearly 100 pages, and it contains details on 92 of the most popular nootropics used today. And it's now available, the second edition of my book, Head First, The Complete Guide to Healing and Optimizing Your Brain with Nootropic Supplements. Head First, the second edition, is 962 pages. And it's available in hardcover, paperback, or iPad or Kindle. Now, you can get your copy at any major bookseller, including Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Balboa Press, Apple Books, Walmart, and others. You will find a link to these stores down below in the notes section of this video, so get your copy if you haven't already. And if you could use some personal help with choosing the right nootropics, or figuring out how to deal with your own brain health issues, including ADHD, consider booking a personal consultation with me. You'll find a link to my calendar down below in the notes section. And if you want to see more videos on all the best nootropics used today, subscribe to this channel before you leave. I'll be putting up new videos on nootropics and optimizing your brain every week. I'm David Toman, author of Nootropics Expert.